here with Dianne Derby, an Emmy Award-winning journalist on the news team at KOAA News 5 in Colorado Springs. And she's the author of 200 Tuesdays, What a Pearl Harbor Survivor Taught Me About Life, Love, and Faith. Dianne, it's great to be together. It's good to see you.
Mark, I'm so excited to do this with you. It's so fun to be with an old high school friend.
It's amazing to think back to the mid-1990s when we were in high school together in Fort Lauderdale. You know, I didn't realize how different Fort Lauderdale is from the rest of the country until I moved away from there.
Well, I feel like Fort Lauderdale just has, it's like multicultural. And so some of the places that I've lived along my career as a journalist, I'm like, where's everyone who looks different from me? You know, it's just interesting. I love that we grew up there. It was a wonderful place to live. But now we've all moved into new places.
New places with new people. And one of the new people for you is this extraordinary gentleman, Jim Downing. Say a little bit about how you met Jim and what was it like to be friends with him?
When I first got to Colorado Springs, I basically said yes to every event that I was asked to go to because I was the new girl in town and I wanted everyone to know me. And my boss just kept saying, Dianne, say yes to everything that you want. You don't have to go to everything. But this yes was probably the biggest yes I needed to make. I got invited to a veterans breakfast and they said the oldest survivor of Pearl Harbor was going to be there. Did I want to interview him? And I said, absolutely. So I grabbed my chief photographer at the time. I said, let's go really quick. Let's talk to these people and we'll get out. And I thought I'd only be there, 20 minutes. Well, in comes Jim. He's 99 years old. His name is Jim Downing. And he is now, as I've learned through my research, the second oldest survivor of Pearl Harbor. He has since passed. He died at 104 years old. But he walked in and I thought, wait, did he just come in on a walker? He drove here. And so I was immediately fascinated that this 99-year-old man was in the room with me who drove here, not to be ageist, but it's just so interesting to see that. And he's just walking in by himself, Mr. Independent. And so I did a quick interview with him. And I remember he turned all the interest of that interview back on our veterans to today. I consider Jim a hero. Those men who survived Pearl Harbor, it's just so remarkable. Their families, the women with them. And yet he made the whole conversation about veterans today and all the constant dangers that they face and how they have it so much worse than him. And I thought it was so interesting. So at the end of the conversation, he said, I'd like to continue our conversation. Can I give you my card? And I thought, oh, this card carrying guy, this is pretty cool. So he gave me his card and I emailed him thanking him, as I do for most of my interviews, right away. And he said, I'd like to invite you to lunch. And I said, great. He goes, bring your husband to Garden of the Gods Club. And Garden of the Gods Club is this absolutely gorgeous club that overlooks Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs, one of the centerpieces of our community. And so began our lunch. And so began more than 200 Tuesdays with him when he asked me to do a Bible study with him.
Wow.
I gave you a really fast forward 20-second journalist version there.
So you brought your husband. You thought it was just going to be a friendly get to know you kind of chat over breakfast at this beautiful place. But in reading your book, what I discovered was there was so much more going on than this beautiful venue. And it was about Jim wanting to talk to you about things much deeper and more important.
Much deeper and more important. And I know the value of them now. But one of the questions, I don't think we had gotten our waters yet at this restaurant. And his son was sitting with him and he said, Dianne, tell me about your relationship with Christ. I almost spit out my water. Did you really just ask me that? I just feel like that's a really personal question to ask someone over lunch you just met. So I swallowed my water. I thought for a second, and I was raised Catholic. And so my relationship with Christ was not deep. My experience with church was I went every Sunday because my family made me go. I was raised in a Catholic high school, so I knew the background enough, but I knew who Jesus was. I just didn't have a meaningful relationship with him. And boy, did I get that from Jim. But when he said that, I gave some sort of answer like that I knew who he was, but I didn't have a relationship with him. And then Jim looked at me, and my poor husband, this is my ex-husband, by the way, I'll tell you that part of the story in a second, but he looked at me and he's like cringing in his seat because he was not, as I call it, Jesus-y material. He was not interested in that conversation, but of course he was going to be polite. He's been to many events with me, so he knew how to act. But it was just so majorly uncomfortable for me. Now I love talking about Jesus, so I'll share that part with you. It's so fun. But it was just the most awkward lunch, and I just couldn't believe he went there. But the reason I stayed was the moment that Jim said, "Do you want to see the most fulfilled person in the world?" I'm like, "Yeah, who doesn't want to see that?" And he said, "You're looking at him." And I just kind of stopped in my tracks. It was like everything went around me. What are you talking about? I mean, I kind of believed him because he was 99, so he probably had gotten there, but really and truly fulfilled, I wanted more of that. And so that's why I stayed in that conversation so long, so willingly. And he invited me into Bible studies, and I didn't even know where my Bible was. I had to go get one. I think it was still wrapped in cellophane when I was confirmed in the church right before I got married. I missed that part, Mark. Isn't that awful? Anyways, so began our Tuesday Bible studies, and it was just the most remarkable experience of my life and just life-changing.
He introduced you to the importance of memorizing Bible passages, and he helped you understand the value of not just reading the Bible, but praying about it. And based on my reading of your memoir, this had a way of just sort of seeping into your life in some unexpected ways. And it was especially foundational for when you experienced some really difficult times. And in your book, you were extraordinarily vulnerable, Dianne, in opening up and sharing things that, quite frankly, a lot of people, I think, may experience and not be willing to talk about. But you open up and talk about it. And to me, it's a testimony about the power of Jesus in your life.
It is. And I thought, so, when I went into writing this memoir, I thought, if I'm going to share about Jim and my journey and all the ways he influenced my life through a very difficult pregnancy, through a very difficult divorce, through many different challenges, through the death of my co-anchor a year and a half ago, even though Jim had passed, his lessons stood with me and they solidified my ability to get through those challenges. I don't think I would have been able to go through what I went through in the same way with the same hope if I hadn't met Jim. And he would say, well, it was all because of Jesus. He would never take credit for it. But just wouldn't have gotten through those things without him. My vulnerability, I'm an open book. My friends know this about me. I'm willing to tell anything. But I shared some of the darkest, most embarrassing moments of my life. And I shared those because I knew it was important for people to understand I'm just like you. I'm just as messed up as you. I'm struggling with the same things you are. And I have dark, deep demons that I've conquered. But people need to know that that's possible. And so they see this shiny journalist on TV, and I've had the hair and the makeup and it looks like my life is totally together. And I do have a wonderful life, but I've had some really bad things happen. And I want people to know that there's hope through that. And so that's why I share those dark parts of my life.
It translates in a powerful way, wanting to share those difficult moments. Because, it's where we have the cracks that the light shines through, and you are allowing the light of Christ to shine brightly. And that's a wonderful thing. I love also some of the lessons that you share from Jim, and just curious, off the top of your head, what's a lesson, especially from Jim, that you remember that you want to share?
Okay, this is one that he always says in every interview, but I love it so much. Life is about meaningful relationships with God, family, and friends. And that sums up a centenarian's life for you. And, you hear that and you're like, oh, okay, a great soundbite. I've used it on air a million times in his interviews, and he uses it with every journalist he talks to. But he so believes that, because if you're not balanced in those three areas of your life, you're going to struggle. And so those relationships are based on the depth and the number of interactions. So yes, you can have a number of interactions with people and your friends and see them over and over, but what is the depth of those conversations? Where are you going with those friendships, with your family, with God, and the community? And so I struggle with that sometimes, because I meet a lot of people as a journalist. And I know, Mark, you in your church meet so many people, and I deeply crave those meaningful conversations. And so with Jim, I had the depth and the number of conversations to have that meaningful relationship with friends side that I needed so bad. He taught me about the meaningful relationship with God. And with my family, it's helped expand the depth of those relationships and where I want to go with those. And so if I could share anything that I think would be the most meaningful of the thousands of things he taught me that were so great, it would be that.
That's really awesome. I was just rechecking my notes that I took from reading your book, and that was one of the things. It's on page 70 for all of you who want to check it out. So here's a question, Dianne. I mean, we can't go back in time. We can't, go in the Wayback Machine and, turn back the pages. Suppose, however, it's back in, say, 1995, 1996, and we're at St. Thomas Aquinas High School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What would Dianne in the year 2021 want to say to that Dianne?
Oh my goodness. I love this question, Mark. To give yourself more grace. I was very unforgiving. I'm still unforgiving of myself. And Jim taught me that Jesus is the God of a million chances. And I am proof of that. You'll read in my book, My Darkness. In my mind, I created all these excuses about why I shouldn't be allowed to be happy in my life, why I shouldn't be allowed to be remarried, why I shouldn't be allowed to have this wonderful daughter. But that is not the God that I know. And the Jesus I know is the Jesus of a million chances. And so I would say, give yourself more grace and more forgiveness, because I was so hard on myself as a teenager. And I don't even know where that really came from, because my parents weren't hard on me that way. I just had to be the straight A student. I had to be the best at everything I did, but you don't have to be the best at everything you do. Give yourself more grace on a daily basis and more forgiveness. And I would also say, I'd like you to think a little bit more. I'd like you to think 30 seconds longer about the choices that you're going to make. Because I made some dopey choices in high school. Because those consequences, there's a consequence for every action that you make. And those consequences can be really significant or small, but really just give yourself 30 more seconds to think. I have to do that every day in my life as a journalist, because I work with a lot of young journalists too. And sometimes I'm like, I want to scream, you can't say that. So I have to take a breath, think about the best way to proceed forward without, hurting anyone's feelings, saying, you can't write something like that, you're going to get us in trouble. Although I'm pretty blunt like that in a newsroom too. I don't know if that answers the question. I feel like I have 1,000 things I would want to say to that teenager.
Yeah, no, it totally does. And it's funny to hear you say that you work with a young journalist, because I want to say, Dianne, you are a young journalist. And, sometimes people still call me a young pastor because I'm younger than 60, I guess. But we're at this really interesting time in our life where we're really not young anymore, at least not like we used to be, but we're not old. So we're at this interesting phase where we have some life experience, we have some wisdom, we have a perspective that's valuable. And I'm really hopeful that we can, not you, me, everybody who graduated in 1996, but everybody, hoping that we can move forward with a little bit of forgiveness for ourselves. And Dianne, I think your book provides a way for people to examine their own story while peering into yours. And for that, I think it's a really wonderful gift.
It's really nice. One of the things that has been really powerful as friends like you, mentors, colleagues have read my book before it comes out is what they're sharing with me about the little ways it's already changed their lives. And I'll give you a good example. One of the things Jim always said, and I hope that all of you learned this from Jim today, is never speak poorly about your spouse in front of others. And it's easy to, make fun of something our spouse did or be frustrated and sound off about that. I didn't do that well in my first marriage. I do that really well now. And I see the value in that so much with Jim. I remember he told me this sweet story about how he never looked at his wife's driver's license because, we all put our weight on there. Well, we don't actually put our real weight, do we? No one puts their real weight. But he never looked at it because he didn't want to know her weight to keep from embarrassing her. How sweet is that? Yeah. So those are tiny little things you do to honor your spouse well. And I have a dear friend of mine who said, Dianne, that is life-changing for me because what Jim taught you is something I'm implementing every day right now with my spouse and making sure I'm not speaking poorly about her to anyone else. Use your therapist for that. Use your pastor for that, whatever it is. But to do that is a really important way to honor your spouse.
That is such good advice. I believe, Dianne, that you are wanting to, have the love of Jesus radiate from your life in your professional work. Even if you don't say the name, it's evident in the way that you carry yourself and how you interact with people, how you respect people. But what I'm guessing is what's at the tippy top of your list is that it shows in your marriage with Chip and in the way that you are raising your daughter, Claire. So I was wondering if you could just speak to that for a little bit.
So it's interesting. I have a 4-year-old and I write about her experiences in the book. Jesus is a big part of our life. We talk about that openly in our house. She knows recently that her grandpa and her grandma and her baby dog who just died last week, it's just been a heck of a week for us, are all in heaven. And we talk about that a lot. And I write about an interesting story in our book. And this was probably one of the most shared stories on my Facebook page ever because it was just so powerful. I have a beautiful painting of Jesus in my house that many of you have seen, I'm sure. Child prodigy, I can't remember her name. Is it Akian? I don't recall it.
Right.
Anyways, it's a very well-known photo of Jesus. So I got it in the mail and I was so excited about it. I was going to put it in a frame and I just thought, I'm going to see what she does when I show her this picture. And I said, Claire, who's that? And I don't have other pictures of Jesus in my house. And she goes, oh, that's Jesus. And I said, oh. And I said, well, when did you see him? And she goes, on my birthday. When Claire was born, I hemorrhaged after, and she had some trouble breathing as she came out, and they had to do a lot of work on her. And so I thought, oh my goodness, was he in that room? I mean, I believed he was. I was praying to him in that room. But now my daughter, who is 3 years old at the time, is telling me he was there. Oh my goodness. So I started recording it because I just thought, I have to share this with my mom or anyone, or maybe my viewers. Who knows what's going to come out of her mouth? And she said, I saw him on my birthday. And I said, oh, what was he doing? Oh, he was at the top of the bed. And I'm like, oh my goodness, he was there. He really was there. And I said, well, what did he do? And she goes, oh, he was floating around the hospital room. I mean, how do you even explain something like that? That she knew that photo, immediate picture, painting, whatever it was, right away was Jesus, and she knew him already. And I thought, I cannot not teach her about him. And I remember, this sounds a little bit dramatic, but as I was hemorrhaging and crashing, essentially 2 hours after her birth, I looked at my husband and essentially said goodbye to him. And one of the last things I said to him was, she must know Jesus. Please, honey, she must know him. And this is why I'm going kind of in and out of consciousness. We went to the ER. The doctor saved my life. So that's just a big priority for me. I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate that into her life more. But I know she knows already who he is, and that's so special to me.
So special. I remember when you posted that story on Facebook, and then to read it again in your book, it brought chills to my arms. Because yes, I mean, we believe that Jesus is present and powerful and active, even in ways we don't realize and understand. And
Yes.
amazingly, little Claire probably understood way better than a lot of adults.
Oh yeah, I think children are closer to him than any of us, you know.
Right.
They just
Right.
know him well, and he's familiar to them and a source of love. So to see her talk so openly about it without me ever saying anything was pretty special.
Very special. Well, Dianne, say for everybody again, when will your book be out and where can they find it?
It is coming out April 5th. They can find it anywhere that books are sold. They can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target. I don't think it'll be in the Target stores unless enough of you buy it. So I don't know how that works. I'm told that's, if a lot of people pre-order it, but you can pre-order it right now. You can also pre-order it through Nav Press, my publisher. I'd be delighted for you to read it and understand some of my story, and hopefully it'll help your life in some small way or big way.
Dianne Derby, thank you so much for making time to chat.
Thank you, Mark.